The war in Afghanistan was an armed conflict from 2001 to 2021. Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe the channel and don't forget to like and comment. This war began with the United States and its allies attacking Afghanistan after the September 11 terrorist attacks. They toppled the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, ruled by the Taliban, and disrupted al-Qaeda's safe operational base in the country. The conflict mainly involved the Taliban fighting against NATO and Afghan armed forces. After 19 years, the Taliban regained power following the withdrawal of the most NATO forces and the defeat of the Afghan armed forces. This was the longest war in the American history, surpassing the Vietnam War by nearly 5 months. A coalition of over 40 countries formed the International Security Assistance Force after achieving initial objectives, taking on a security mission in Afghanistan. Some members, along with the Afghan government, were involved in military combat. The war was primarily between the Taliban and the Afghan armed forces, along with their allied forces. Most of the ISAF troops and personnel were from the US Armed Forces. The US could name the war Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Freedom Sentinel. Following the September 11, 2001 attacks, US President George W. Bush warned the Taliban to hand over the al-Qaeda terrorists in Afghanistan. When the Taliban refused, the US launched an invasion of Afghanistan on October 7, 2001, under the official name Operation Enduring Freedom. The United Kingdom began its independent military in Afghanistan's presidential elections. In 2003, the Taliban began an insurgency against the new Afghan government. The Taliban engaged in asymmetric warfare using guerrilla tactics and ambushes in rural areas. ISAF significantly increased its troops to conduct counter-insurgency operations, focusing on clearing and holding villages. The number of soldiers started to rise in 2009, reaching 140,000 to end the conflict. These efforts culminated on February 29, 2020, when the US and the Taliban signed a conditional peace agreement in Doha. According to the agreement, US forces would withdraw from Afghanistan within 14 months, and the Taliban committed to not allowing any of its members, individuals, or other groups, including al-Qaeda, to use Afghan soil to threaten the security of the United States and its allies. However, al-Qaeda affiliates in the Indian subcontinent and ISIS continued their activities in parts of the country. The Afghan government was not a party to the deal and rejected its provision regarding the release of prisoners. After Joe Biden became president, he moved the withdrawal date from May 1, 2021 to September 11 and then to August 31 of the same year. The Taliban rejected this timeline change and launched a major offensive after the initial deadline, capturing most of Afghanistan, including Kabul, on August 15, 2021. On that same day, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, and the Taliban declared victory and the end of the war. On August 16, Biden acknowledged the Taliban's control, and on August 30, the last US military plane left Afghanistan, ending the 20-year Western military presence in the country. According to the Council of War project at Brown University, the war in Afghanistan resulted in the death of 176,000 people, including 46,000 civilians and 69,000 military and police personnel, and at least 52,000 Taliban fighters. The war also cost the United States $2.26 trillion. The September 11 attacks were the main reason for the start of the Afghanistan war. This plan was officially approved by Osama bin Laden in 1999. He personally selected 2 of the hijackers and trained them at the Mezina camp. Later that year, 4 other hijackers met with bin Laden in Kandahar, where they also received their training. Another hijacker joined them in 2000 at the Al-Faruq camp. In total, 14 hijackers were chosen by bin Laden for the 2001 hijacking plan. and were being trained from 2000 to 2001. By July 2001, all 13 had entered the United States. During the September 11, 2001 attacks, approximately 3,000 civilians, in addition to the hijackers, were killed. Another plane crashed as the crew attempted to regain control. Less than a week after the incident, then President George W. Bush identified Osama bin Laden as the main suspect. Bin Laden was in Afghanistan at the time, and on September 20, 2001, in a joint session of Congress, President Bush, with Congress's consent, outlined 5 demands for the Taliban in Afghanistan. Number 1. All al-Qaeda leaders must be handed over to the United States. Number 2. All foreign nationals held in Taliban custody must be freed and handed over to the United States. 3. All terrorist training camps must be shut down. 4. All terrorists and their supporters must be identified and handed over to authorities. Number 5. The United States must be given full access to terrorist training camps for inspection. George Bush started, they must hand over the terrorists to US, or they will share in their fate. There wasn't a specific threat attached to this statement, other than a declaration that the war would continue. Our war on terror began with al-Qaeda, but it doesn't end there. None of the 19 men involved in the attacks were Afghan. They included 15 from Saudi Arabia, 2 from United Arab Emirates, and 2 others from Egypt and Lebanon. None of them were Afghan nationals at the time. None had received flight training in Afghanistan. The training was done in the United States. At that time, the Afghan government stated through its embassy in Pakistan that the US had not provided any evidence linking bin Laden to the September 11 attacks, and the Afghan government also did not have such evidence. They also declared that bin Laden was in their country as a guest, and according to Taliban and Pashtun customs, guests must always be treated with hospitality and have the right to asylum.